So in part one of this series, I talked about who I think will actually make the college football playoff, and then that set up some matchups where it will be the 5 versus 12 seed, the 6 versus 11 seed, the 7 versus 10 seed, and the 8 versus 9 seed. And so in this video, I'll be going over my predictions of who I think will win those games, if they were to happen, and then eventually predicting the national champion and who I think that will be. So starting off with Oregon and Boise State, I think this game's actually happen. Oregon would win this pretty easily. I think the home field advantage can be a huge advantage, probably even more than the NFL, especially in a place like Oregon where it can get super loud. And I think Oregon's just the better team. If the Ducks are going to win it all, I think this is the year. And I think they start off with a win against Boise State. Although I think Boise State can definitely put up a fight, I don't think they have history on their side either. The closest we saw ever to a non-Power 5 or now Power 4 team winning a big game against a simply better opponent would be Cincinnati and Alabama. And Alabama still pretty easily won that game. So I think it would be very tough for Boise State to win, especially because it's not a neutral state game. And I think Oregon wins this one. And then the next game, Texas and Florida State, was a game I thought would be close. But I actually released the first video on Saturday night, I believe, which obviously came after Florida State lost to Georgia Tech. And I almost redid the video and just took Florida State out and changed my original predictions, but I decided not to. I probably shouldn't have waited till Saturday night to release the video. I was just overconfident in Florida State to not lose to Georgia Tech. But it is early in the season, so I'm not going to give up on Florida State quite yet. And it's not like I have them ranked as the 5 or the 6 seed or the conference champion. So I am still going to keep them here in the playoffs at number 11. And they will play Texas. And I was originally going to pick Texas anyways. Now I just feel even more confident about that pick. From what I saw in the Florida State-Georgia Tech game, DJ Uyunglele did not look very confident yet, but I'm sure that will change as the season goes on. But Florida State just didn't look like the team they were last year. But in this game, if it does happen, it's in Austin. Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, they have playoff experience. We're very close to beating Washington last year, and I think they get the job done here with a pretty, I would say, easy win at this point for what I've seen from Florida State. I think Florida State could improve, but from what I saw against Georgia Tech, I don't know. For this next game, if you love defense, you'll love this game. Penn State, Alabama. I know Nick Saban isn't there anymore, but still both these teams are great at defense, have been for many years now. And I think if these two teams meet up in the playoffs, there's not going to be a ton of points. But I do think the deciding factor will be Jalen Milroe, game changer on offense. And I think he can ultimately change the game enough, make enough plays to get the win for Alabama. But like I said, ton of great defense in this game. I just think Alabama has a little bit more enough playoff experience too. And also just the reality, Penn State has not had a great record in the big games, in the Big Ten. And they have not been in the playoffs before when it was in the 4-team playoffs. And those big games in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, they did not perform well. So I do give Alabama the advantage here, especially because they are at home in the playoffs as they have it right now. Then you might remember in the first video that I said that since Notre Dame is an independent school, they do get that extra little bit of rest, kind of like a bye week because they don't have a conference championship to play in. So although they can't actually get a top 4 seed because they don't have a conference championship to win, they still get kind of a little bit of extra rest. And I think that actually helps them here. They're not going to be to start the playoffs at home, at least the way I have it. But I think they actually do benefit a little bit from this. They get a little bit of a break before their playoff game. And even though they're going into Ole Miss, I do actually think they win here. They're the first road team to win. Ole Miss has one of the best offenses, but usually in playoffs, defenses are what wins you championships. And Marcus Freeman is a defensive coach, and I think that also helps here. So I am going to go with Notre Dame here in a very close one. this would probably be the best game out of all of them because I think Oregon would win pretty easily, and I think Texas would win pretty easily. Alabama and Penn State would be a good game too, but I do have Notre Dame advancing into the next round. So unlike the NFL playoffs where they do reseeding, that is not the case in the college football playoff. The winner of the 5 versus 12 game will play the 4 seed, which in this case is Utah, no matter what. So in this case, it is Oregon and Utah. And even though Utah has had success against Oregon in the past, including a Pac-12 championship win, I do think Oregon will win here. I just think they're too good of a team not to at least get into the Final Four. And in this case, I do think Utah would keep it very close in this game. Even though the game would not be played in Utah, it would be played at a neutral site. But at the same time, I just think Oregon's too good not to at least win another game in the playoffs. So while I think this is probably a field goal game, maybe an overtime game, a very close game, I still think Oregon wins. Then the winner of the 6 seed versus the 11 seed, which in this case is Texas, will play the 3 seed, which is Miami. And I actually think Texas would win this one too, making it another conference champion eliminated. They have the playoff experience, which helps them a lot. It would be Miami's first time ever being in the modern college football playoff. And while I think Cam Ward could have a great season, I just don't think he can do enough to get Miami past Texas. I just think Texas is too good of a team, and they have that extra motivation after how close they came last year to getting to the national championship, and I think they win this game. So next would be a battle of two of arguably the 2 most successful college football programs in the last decade, or maybe ever, Ohio State and Alabama. And remember, this game would be played at a neutral site, so Ohio State's home field advantage would not really play a factor here. At the end of the day, similar to the Texas-Miami game, I just think Ohio State is too talented. Maybe if Nick Saban was still on the sidelines for Alabama, maybe they could find a way to win this one, but whether it's Will Howard from Kansas State, Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, or Caleb Downs from Alabama, I just feel like Ohio State knows this is their year with Jim Harbaugh in the NFL, and I think they do get past Alabama here. Then finally, Notre Dame gets unlucky and has to face Georgia, and I think Georgia takes care of this one pretty easily. I think Notre Dame got a favorable matchup in the first round, but this time, not so much. Georgia's too good. Carson Beck, Heisman Trophy contender, and I think he just takes care of business with the rest of this Georgia team. Kirby Smart will not be going out of the playoffs, at least not this early. So now Ohio State and Texas meet with a spot in the national championship on the line. And while Texas does have a little bit of advantage here, because last year they're in a very similar position, actually the exact same position when they faced Washington with a chance to go to the national championship, which would obviously help them. But beating Ohio State will not be easy, especially because Ryan Day has only so many opportunities to finally win a national championship with Ohio State. This would be a very close game, but I do think Ohio State barely wins it. I just think they're too talented. While I think Texas obviously has a lot of talent too, I just can't see Ohio State being this talented and not getting the national championship. I've already mentioned a few of their players, but there's a very strong argument to make that this is the most talented team in all of college football, and I just can't see them not making the national championship. Then on the other side of the bracket, it is Georgia and Oregon. This game could potentially decide the Heisman Trophy. It's Dylan Gabriel versus Carson Beck. This would be a must-watch game. This game could honestly go either way. It's really hard to not pick Georgia, though. Oregon, this would be their first time really in the playoffs in a very long time. And against such a good Georgia team, it's really hard just not to pick them here. Kirby Smart's already won 2 national championships. Was 1-1 away against Alabama from having a chance at a 3rd in a row. I could certainly see Oregon winning it, but Oregon has not been great, at least recently in the big games. They lost to Washington twice in 2 games they needed to have, whether it's the game actually in Seattle earlier in the season and then in Las Vegas for the championship. So I trust Georgia a little bit more, and so I do think they beat Oregon here. Then with the Ducks and Longhorns eliminated, that just leaves the Bulldogs and Buckeyes left to compete for a national championship. And although it might be boring, these are the 2 best teams in college football. And as it is right now, I definitely think these are the two favorites to meet in the national championship game in Atlanta. And I do think Georgia wins. Again, Kirby Smart wins his third national championship with the Bulldogs in Atlanta. I think the game being in Atlanta does actually help them. Gives them a little bit of a home field advantage against Ohio State. I do not fully trust Ohio State in the big games. I know I've picked them to go all the way to the national championship. But in the really big games, they have not always proved themselves, whether it was against Michigan these last couple of years or against Georgia, actually, again, when they had C.J. Stroud. So I do pick Georgia here in a very close one to win their third in 4 years and create a modern college football dynasty. So those are my college football playoff predictions. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.